Let's get into that. Early Christian persecution. Let's get into that. Okay, maybe now? Maybe now? Shit. Oh, this is not going great. I'm having problems with my USB drivers or something. It's not detecting my microphone. Oh, okay, you can hear me now. Oh, okay, cool. Sweet. I guess I'll go through the list again. Thank you everybody in the live chat for joining and for waiting on me. Richard Madsen, Critical Cripple, Iron Charioteer, What the Faith, Hannah Anderson, great lover of Great Pyrenees. We were sharing some pictures on Twitter today. We got Mark Caesar, S.J. Thomason. Hi, S.J. Thank you so much for joining. Mr. Shadow Kitty, reading my lips. Let's see, who else do we have? Tatted Philosophy, of course. That's my boo. What's up, man? Chris Foster. Hey, Chris, how's it going? I probably already said Blue Collar Heathen, but it deserves to be said twice. Scoobert, buddy from Discord. What's up, man? And Noka. Hey, man, how's it going? Thanks for joining. All right, so I don't know if you could hear the sound in the intro, but um, basically we're going to go over what persecution was like for early Christians from the first century through the fourth century. We might go into a little bit after the fourth century, but just for the context of the video I'll be responding to, I'm going to try to keep it within the first 400 years. Yeah, Maynard, I'll puff it up later. You know how it goes. I just got to make sure all my sounds right. Oh shit! I've got a chat in my thing. I forgot I did that. That's awesome. Coolio. Actually, can I put that on the put it on the outside? There we go. Yeah, cool. Groovy, groovy. All right. So, with that being said, oh well, why am I just showing you that? Okay, that's dumb. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna try not to pause it too often. At first, I'm probably going to have to, but once we get into like the martyrdom of the apostles, I'm gonna let SJ list them all out before I go into it any. Let's see here. Here we go. Let me know if you can hear
Hi
it.
everyone, this is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com.
Okay, if you heard SJ, let me know in the live chat before I go on, because I'm not gonna look like a dummy. What's up, Nim? Nerdy Rodent, hello. Let me know if you hear SJ. Okay, cool. Critical said they heard SJ. Good deal. Although she's quiet. Okay, I'll turn SJ up. You heard him, SJ. You're not loud enough.
Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about, were the disciples, Jesus' disciples, really persecuted? There is some chatter on YouTube and sometimes on Twitter and other social media spots where I've heard people make the claim that the disciples weren't really persecuted. So tonight what I would like to do is provide evidence that yes, they were persecuted in a really horrific way, actually. As C.S. Lewis said, the great difficulty is to get audiences to realize that you are preaching.
Wait, I just want to point out real quick that she's prefacing this video by preparing you for the horrible torment that is going to be done to these eyewitnesses of the resurrected Christ.
That yes, they were persecuted in a really horrific way, actually. As C.S. Lewis said, the great difficulty is to get audiences to realize that you are preaching Christianity simply because you happen to think it's true. In a conversation I had with philosophy professor Tim Grew, he asked me which place I thought starting a new religion would be successful: Mecca in Saudi Arabia or Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Just real quick, just to address Maynard Safe's question in the live chat. Why would it matter if they were persecuted? According to SJ and other Christian apologists, they don't believe that the disciples would die for a simple belief, and not just die, but they claim that they have had opportunities to recant and they didn't, and that they suffered these horrific deaths, and even in miraculous ways, lions surrendering, people being in the shape of a cross, and there's symbolic, a lot of symbolism in some of the martyrdoms. There's some claims of prophecy fulfillment, like with Peter being crucified upside down. That's said to fulfill a prophecy, but we'll get into that.
Given the freedom to practice religion in Milwaukee and the widespread persecution that Christians have experienced in many countries of the Muslim world, I answered Milwaukee. While Christians can freely worship in many countries of the world, especially in the West, this wasn't always the case. Prior to 313, when Constantine granted Christians legal status, they had no legal protections. Following Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection,
okay, they had no legal protections. Hang on a second. Let me go back
and
and
the
listen to
freedom
that.
to practice religion in Milwaukee and the widespread persecution that Christians have experienced in many countries of the Muslim world, I answered Milwaukee. While Christians can freely worship in many countries of the world, especially in the West, this wasn't always the case.
So, I guess we can ask that question
Prior
in a
to
minute.
313, when Constantine granted Christians
Okay, prior to just before the Council of Nicaea, I believe it's the Edict of Milan, claiming that before then that
legal status, they had no legal protection.
that they had no legal status, no legal protection. I don't know if you're saying that they were illegal, SJ, but there was no illegal religion as far as early Christianity goes, not until much later, anyways. There was, I guess you could call it persecution. There was persecution of the Jews. Claudius expelled Jews from Rome. There was nothing special or no particular reason they were picking on the Christians. In fact, at first, the Romans couldn't even distinguish the Jews from the Christians until they started proselytizing and started acting strange. And when they were asked to participate in the cultural rituals which involved the pagan deities making some sort of a libation or an offering of grain of some sort at a temple of another god. They believe that it was in the best health and the best interest of their city, that in doing so it would satiate the gods, and it would bring them good fortune. As a matter of fact, you see whenever they conquer a city state, or if they conquer some place with a temple, which most places in that area had at least one temple, they would make an offering to that god in order to say, we serve you, we want to make you happy. And the Christians not doing that to the Romans and to the pagans, it was essentially like not vaccinating your kids is today, but there's a little bit less science to back that up.
Following Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, Christians were heavily persecuted.
Christians were heavily persecuted. No, maybe during a few years during Nero's reign, after the Great Fire of Rome, he kind of used the Christians as a scapegoat for that. Whether or not he started it or the Christians really did start it, historians really don't know. But it's popular to say that Nero did it, and that he fiddled while Rome burned, or he watched it from on top of a car, or watched it, from a stage or from his house. But I believe historically he was actually off on some sort of conquest, or some sort of journey. He was far away, and whenever he got back, he actually sent a whole bunch of supplies immediately to all the people who were affected. Bread and water. He made sure that everybody was taken care of. He actually had it brought in from other city-states.
Especially under Roman emperors such as Nero, who blamed them for the Great Fire in Rome.
Sorry.
Life was not easy for the early Christians. In the New Testament, numerous reports by authors such as Luke and Paul document early Christian persecution. Acts 7:54-60 documents the stoning of Stephen, while Acts 12:2 documents the way Herod Agrippa put James, the brother of John, to death by the sword.
Okay, we'll talk about this in a minute.
Paul was also stoned, beaten, jailed.
Paul was stoned. I'm stoned too, Paul.
When he documented in his New Testament books. His beheading by Nero was documented by Origen, Tertullian, and Dionysius of Corinth.
Well, man, I want to say something, but I'm gonna wait until you list all the apostles and the attributed causes of death, or attributed cases of martyrdom. Attested, I should say.
The martyrdom of Jesus' half-brother James was documented by Josephus, Hegesippus, and Clement of Alexandria. Peter was crucified upside down, as confirmed by Eusebius, the first church historian, in his book Ecclesiastical History, and also by Dionysius of Corinth, Tertullian, and Origen. So there are most accepted traditions. We don't have...
I hope everybody's following along. If not, I'll fill you in and catch you up. But just if you have a pencil and paper, whatever, and you just want to kind of scratch down like what these apostles are. Whenever I show you all of the contradicting, not just traditions, but the contradicting texts from early church fathers, from early 2nd century and 3rd century texts that Christians have no problem finding things in, or how many of the traditional cases of martyrdom, or the traditional accounts of martyrdom of some of the apostles, they actually get it from apocryphal texts, from texts that are completely outlandish, and they just completely leave out details. And you'll see when SJ is mentioning some of the apostles here, she'll either conveniently leave out how they were martyred, or she'll conveniently leave out where they were martyred. And there's a reason there, and I believe SJ knows that there are different traditions, and I'm kind of curious why you wouldn't say that this is what tradition is, but history also says this. Like these other texts also say this. These earlier texts, these in any other context more reliable texts say something completely different. I feel like that would be a very honest position to take, and honestly, that was my main reason for making this video was just you know just you sticking to tradition. And I've asked this question several times, but I personally don't think it is. But do you believe that tradition is a reliable source of truth? Uh, I mean, solely tradition, like saying, this is what the church says, and the church has said this for 2,000 years, and there's no reason why we should, well, not even 2,000 years, it says for 1,900 years, and, we shouldn't question it because this is the earliest traditions, even though you are presented with other people saying different things, like much like some of the early orthodoxy of the church. I was talking to somebody on Twitter today, and we were talking about the Gnostics, and I told him that some of Christian doctrine, some of Christian orthodoxy, actually developed from Gnostic teachings, and was used for Gnostic teachings. Tertullian calls the Apostle Paul what did he call him, the apostle of the devil, or the apostle of what did he call him, oh shoot, I don't remember, but basically the apostle of a heretic, basically, because his writings were used later on by Valentinus to promote his brand of Gnosticism, because Paul was saying things like and Paul was very proto-Gnostic, and I guess you could say proto-Catholic, and he just ended up merging one way. Oh, thank you, SJ. Yeah, it's really interesting. I was looking at your blog. I noticed that your script here was actually a blog from your Christian-apologist.com website. SJ posts blogs on there all the time on theological topics. They're really interesting to read. She's a great writer. It's very readable, very digestible. If you like reading things like that, I would suggest checking them out. But I also highly encourage you to fact check whoever you read, whether it's SJ or Bart Ehrman. It's irrelevant. But if it's me, you don't have to fact check me, because no, just kidding. Fact check me for sure.
Accounts by historians for some of the other apostles. However, what we do have are traditions. Our tradition.
No, SJ, I'm not saying that the later texts are more valid than earlier texts. What I'm saying is that church tradition holds later texts to be more valid than earlier texts.
Indicate that Matthew suffered martyrdom in Ethiopia, and he was killed by the sword. Bartholomew.
Okay, Ethiopia by the sword. Bartholomew
was flayed to death by a whip.
Flayed to death by a whip. Flayed, so like skinned, essentially. He had the skin taken off of his body by a whip.
Andrew was crucified on an X-shaped cross in Greece.
Crucified on an X-shaped cross in Greece.
The cross is now known as the Cross of St. Andrew.
Yep, and actually my favorite spider is also sometimes called the St. Andrew spider. Some know it as the garden orb weaver, but they make a beautiful web with like a little zigzag pattern down the middle, and they're great for your garden. And when they sit in the middle with their legs out, like in an X shape. They have two together, two together, two together, and two together, and it's really neat. Sorry, I'm going off on tangents.
Thomas was stabbed with a spear in India.
Stabbed with a spear in India. That was Thomas. The reason we don't have the Gnostics in the Bible is because the church decided the books included needed to be early. Okay, SJ. I mean, we can talk about early text and which texts would have been seen as reliable and what they considered to be canon. And I think that we would find really quickly that there are quite a few texts that would fall under that category, but were thrown out for other reasons, and that's because they contradicted with they were contradictory to the popular belief, which is why Gnosticism didn't win out. I don't like saying Gnosticism just as one group of thinking or group of religion, because Gnosticism was just as diverse as Christianity is. It's they all had completely different beliefs. As a matter of fact, I would say that they were more diverse than Christianity in their beliefs, in their fundamental beliefs. Where in the world am I? Okay, hang on. Okay, here we go. Okay, so as far as early texts go, like the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is from written somewhere between the middle of the 1st century and the middle of the 2nd century. The Epistle of Eugnastes, about the same time, maybe about 10 years later on the high side. Sophia, the book of Sophia of Jesus Christ, was written up to the beginning, the very beginning, or the end of the beginning of the 3rd century, the end of the 2nd century. So I mean, these are books that would certainly be considered canon under any other circumstances. As far as books under the 2nd century, I mean, you've got the Infancy Gospel of Thomas, you have the Infancy Gospel of James, you have Isidore, which is a Gnostic text. You have the Gospel of Judas. You have the Gospel of Mary. You have the Apocrypha of John, the Apocryphon of John. My apologies. And quite a few more. I mean, let's see, the Gospel of the Ebionites. The Ebionites were a Gnostic sect who developed around the end of the 1st century. They were actually had their shit together before Christians had their orthodoxy. They had a set of beliefs. A lot of people don't realize how long it took Christianity to develop their orthodoxy. Where is the live chat? How do I get that back? Here it is. Hello. Let's see. Well, we know what they consider to be canon because we have our Bibles today. Well, of course, yeah. I'm not disputing that. But we were talking about the age of text, right? And so that's what I was saying. That there are early texts that weren't put into canon, and because you were saying that it wasn't put into canon because it was an older text. The reason we don't, let's see. Okay. Oh, thank you for subscribing, SJ. I think I've subscribed to your channel. If not, I'll do it after the stream. All right, let's continue.
Paul was tortured and beheaded by the Emperor Nero in 67, which...
Tortured and beheaded by Nero in 67. That's a really specific date. I don't even think scholars can put that definitive of a date on it. I think they usually think it's like between 63 and 67 or 68, something like that. Like there's like a 4 or 5 year period from what I've seen, from the scholarship that I've seen. I'm not sure which source that you're getting the exact date from, but I'd be interested to see those sources.
Which we actually do have information about. Peter was crucified upside down in fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy. James the Lesser was either beaten or stoned to death while...
SJ, I just named several texts that were not put into canon. Several of them. The Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Sophia, or Sophia of the Christ, the Gospel of the Ebionites. The Gospel of the Lord, several Gnostic texts. The Infancy Gospel of James, Infancy Gospel of Thomas, Isidore. I read a lot of them.
Praying for his attackers. Philip was reportedly crucified.
those are late compared to what? Like the Gospel of Thomas is dated at 50 on the low side. Like that's very early. 50 is extremely early. And as far as the early side, texts that are not in the Gospel, dating less than 80 on the low side. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 4 that I can see right now that date less than 80 on the low side, and on the high side they're mid 2nd century. I SJ, rewind it. I did. I dated them.
Crucified upside down in Hierapolis, Turkey. In 2011, archaeologists in Hierapolis discovered what they believed to be Philip's tomb.
Okay, I forgot to look this one up, but we're gonna go on this journey together because this is my channel, right? Like, so we can just real honestly, we're just gonna go 2011 Philip's tomb, and we're just gonna see what comes up. I haven't searched this. I was going to. I forgot. My head's been scrambled. I honestly, I have like a notebook here and like some like shitty notes over here. Like I just wanted to make a response video, to be honest with you. Let's see. Yes, they date Thomas in the 2nd century on the high side. SJ, on the high side it's like 140. On the high side, on the low side it's 50. I mean that's extremely early. I mean, you have no problem with late, very late 1st century texts being written and saying that they're eyewitness accounts. Like that's I mean, if those are eyewitness accounts, then these are secondhand accounts, right? I mean, let's see. Apostle Philip's tomb found in Turkey. Biblicalarchaeology.org. I've seen a lot of good stuff from this site. I have seen some bad scholarship, but we'll check this out. Italian archaeologists working at the site of Hierapolis in southwestern Turkey believe they discovered this tomb of Saint Philip, one of Jesus' 12 apostles. You would think that we would know where these things are, especially like the tomb where Jesus was buried. Like Joseph of Arimathea's tomb that was in his garden. Like we know it was in Joseph of Arimathea's garden, but nobody knows where the tomb is. There are 2 traditional places, I believe at least. One of them has a church built on it. I want to say it was like 4th to 7th century or whatever. There's a church built at the site. But nobody can decide on the tomb of Jesus. And like things like the tombs of the apostles, you would think that these would be held sacred. Like I believe Paul, Paul's head is like supposedly buried underneath this monastery, and other parts of him are like shipped across the world, like it's like Amazon or whatever. But we don't know where apostles' tombs are. We don't know where Jesus's tomb is. That's suspect, highly suspect. Let's see, as we were cleaning out the new church we discovered a month ago, we finally found the grave. Oh wow, they found a new church. That's interesting. See, I find that much more interesting. With close examination, we determined that the grave had been moved from its previous location in the St. Philip Church to this new church in the 5th century during the Byzantine era. D'Andrea said the excavation of the tomb will begin in the near future. This was in 2011. So I guess they excavated it and didn't come up with anything, and they were just like, shh, they'll never ask about it. Let's see, all I see is 2011. Let's see if we have anything 2000. Let's just put Philip's tomb. Just leave 2011 out of it. Let's see. Okay, I guess we'll go with this first one here. A 4th or 5th century church at Hierapolis. I think this might be the one they thought was Jesus's tomb. Maybe this might. No. This isn't it. Never mind. It's Turkey. The tomb wasn't discovered at the center of the octagonal hilltop martyrium as long expected, however, but in a newly excavated church about 40 yards away. Damn, they got churches that close? Found a first century Roman tomb located at the center of the new church. Interesting, which he says originally contained Philip's remains. Who says this? D'Andrea? Francesco D'Andrea is the excavating director and author. I believe he was on the first one, or he was writing about the first one, so it sounds like he has a vested interest in it. But it says that the remains are no longer in the tomb, but he says they were very likely moved to Constantinople at the end of the 6th century, and then possibly taken in Rome and placed in the newly dedicated Church of St. Philip and St. John, although 12th century reports describe seeing Philip's remains still in Constantinople, the seat of Christian Turkey. But a big fish came and actually ate them, and then it went over and swam all the way across the ocean, and it shitted on another beach, and then a dog picked him up, and we just don't know where it is. But it's Philip's tomb, so that's what's important. Okay, well, that's not it.
Matthias reportedly preached in the land of the cannibals. Jesus' apostles were not the only.
Wait, I didn't hear how he was martyred.
They believed to be Philip's tomb. Matthias reportedly preached in the land of the cannibals.
He preached in the land of the cannibals. Okay. Are you saying that he got eaten?
In Hierapolis discovered what they believed to be Philip's tomb. Matthias reportedly preached in the land of the cannibals.
He preached in the land of the
Jesus'
cannibals.
apostles were not the only ones to be persecuted.
Wait, SJ, I think you're missing some. I think you're missing quite a few, actually. I don't know why you stopped with that. I don't know. Well, I know why everybody stops with that, but I just wish people would be honest and just name all of them. Like, I mean, so I can see you not having sources for the non-traditional accounts of the martyrdom of the apostles that you did mention. But why would you not mention the other apostles at all? Especially when you make the claim that they were martyred. Let's see. We have, you said Paul was beaten and jailed, as told in the New Testament books. The martyrdom of Stephen, he was stoned according to Acts 7:54 through 60. Jesus's half-brother died according to Acts 12:2, and Josephus and Hegesippus and Clement of Alexandria. But how did he die? How did James, the half-brother of Jesus, die? You left that out. That's, I don't know. I don't know why you would leave that out. That seems important to me. Let's see. Let me pull up. Okay, let's see. James, the brother of Jesus. Josephus in 93 said that he was stoned. Acts 12:2 is really ambiguous about it. Hegesippus said that he was clubbed. He's quoted here by Eusebius. But how did he die? The second Apocalypse of James from the 2nd century says that he fell downstairs and he was stoned and hit with a club. Like, they cover all of their bases. But there's a secret book of James, also from the 2nd century, that says that James, the half-brother of Jesus, was crucified. And I find that to be just very, very interesting. I think that was the end of your list. Let me look at my video notes that I took. Sorry, y'all just gonna have to deal with me being stoned. This is just me. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Actually, I'm sorry you have to put up with it. Let's see. While I'm doing that, I just want to talk about this this persecution complex, and how Christians go around saying that it's a bad thing, that it's awful, but this is something that Jesus said would happen. Jesus prophesied this. This is Jesus's prophecy. He said that this would happen. In James 5, it says, "As an example of suffering and patience, brothers, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Behold, we consider those blessed who remain steadfast, those who didn't turn back, those who didn't commit apostasy." It says, "You have heard of the steadfastness of Job." We all know Job. Job's stubborn son of a gun. No matter what, he would not break his loyalty with God. Well, absolutely would not. No matter what happened to him, just rain down just terrors on him and ruin his life, but he would never denounce God. "And you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful." I mean, these are early, very early beliefs, very early traditions. Let's see. So, so I guess before we do this, let's talk about what a martyr is. In Greek, the Greek word for martyr basically means that you were a witness. It essentially means that the people who died had personally witnessed Jesus not only perform miracles, but they witnessed the risen Jesus. That's the Christian understanding of what a martyr is. Somebody who dies for their belief that they hold so sincerely. But the thing is that martyrdom almost seems like it requires death, and there are very few times that exceptions are made for apostates, and some of those exceptions, they're made bishops. There's some interesting stories about that, but by and large, to commit apostasy was awful. That's why Christians were persecuted in the time of Nero. That's why he made them the scapegoat, because they couldn't figure out who else to blame the fire on, and they said, well, they haven't been making sacrifices, they haven't been giving libations to the gods, so I'm just going to so it's obviously their fault, right? Like, they are the superstitio, like they are the weirdies. They're meek. They turn the other cheek. They don't stand up for what they believe in. They walk around wailing and talking about the end of days and the King of the Jews, and they refused to become Roman citizens. And so he just said, you know what, screw it. Like, it has to be their fault. And so, but were they killed for being Christians? Or were they killed for violating a social code that had a death sentence? However wrong that may be, I do think it is very wrong. I see it the equivalent of during the Inquisition, where if somebody didn't believe in the risen Jesus, then they would force them to renounce their belief and renounce their claim, or be burned. And then once they renounced their claim, they'd be forced to wear usually it was like a yellow cross or some sort of a token around their neck, so that everybody would know that they were heretics, essentially, that they were unclean, they were not to be socialized with, they were just allowed to live, essentially. They normally weren't allowed to marry. So that's essentially what it is somebody feeling so strongly about their belief that they're willing to persecute somebody else for it. You saw it happen with the Jews. You see it happening in context in the history that we're going through right now in the first century with Nero, with the Christians, and you see it today with Christians all over the world. You see it today with Muslims all over the world. You see it today with atheists all over the world. It's just but when you live in a land where people feel so strongly about their belief and they have the ability uh, to place their beliefs on a higher authoritative level than yours and say mine take precedent, yours don't matter, yours conflict with mine, therefore you need to go. That happens today, and it's awful. And it's awful here too. I don't condone this. Um, let's see. I guess I should have been looking for it while I was talking, right? Fucking, jeez, Jim. Let's see. All right, let's just play the video.
And I'll quote, "The first Christian martyrs to be thrown into the wild beasts died in the arena of the Colosseum, and because of these martyrs, who succeeded the gladiators, the Colosseum was venerated greatly during the Middle Ages. It was considered to be a monument consecrated to the martyrdom of the early Christians. Only for that reason was it saved. And
Um,
for the same reason, the vast structure, partially in ruins but still impressive in character, is still revered by many in the civilized world today." Another quote, "Immediately after registering Marcus Aurelius' succession to Antonius Pius in 161, Eusebius reports that at the time discussed there were great persecutions in Asia, and that Polycarp was one of the martyrs of these persecutions."
yeah, wasn't he like number 13 or
So you
something
can
like
see
that?
a scene of that. Polycarp is up there on the right. That's a famous painting of him. Before telling the story of Polycarp's arrest, torture, and execution, Eusebius makes references to the other martyrs with a summary characterization and some gory details of the barbarous treatment of these victims in this round of anti-Christian violence in Smyrna. For Polycarp was the 12th martyr in this city,
12.
all the other martyrs being from Philadelphia. Apart from Polycarp, Eusebius mentions only one other martyr by name, Germanicus, and this is quoted in Caritsis, 1968. Another quote, "According to the martyrdom of Polycarp, it was the noonday crowd at the Colosseum."
For those who don't know, the noonday crowd, that was typically whenever they would have criminals be brought out into the arena and have wild animals thrown in there with them. And I also want to point out that many of the apostles, including James, I believe, and probably even Stephen, I'm pretty sure they weren't martyred. They weren't killed for their belief, and they didn't go willingly. They were they ran. They ran from place to place, and when they were eventually caught and they were tried, I believe with James it says that he had broken the law in some way. But it does not say that it was for their Christianity, and it doesn't say that they were given a chance to recant anything. They were just executed essentially, and there's a lot of attributions of martyrdom applied to them. Oh, and the Colosseum. I hope you know that Nero had nothing to do with the Colosseum. The Colosseum wasn't even built until around the time of the destruction of the temple, around 70, I believe. I don't even think it was finished until like the mid 70s. And as far as the Christians being used in it, I believe there's a story of a monk, right, who came and he saw some gladiators fighting, and he said, what do you say, in the name of Jesus, this needs to stop, or in the name of Jesus, stop this violence or whatever. And the tradition is it so moved the emperor that he immediately stopped it, and no fights happened from that day forward, except for the following like 4 or 5 years where they still kind of did it every now and then. And also want to mention that at this point they had already stopped having Christians in there. This was at a time where Christians weren't being thrown into the Colosseum unless they were criminals. If they were thrown into the Colosseum, then it's because they broke the law and they were just as guilty and or innocent and or deserving of their punishment as anybody else in there.
That reacted with uncontrollable wrath when Bishop Polycarp confessed to being a Christian They first cried out to Philip the Asiarch.
Yeah, I do have evidence of them running SJ. There's let's see. Paul tells them to run and to flee because Jesus won't come back until they go to all the cities of Israel. I don't. I believe it's something like that. Let me. I'll find it for you. Um, yeah, I mean, but yeah, I just want to clarify that Jesus said, that that we should pick up our crosses and we should follow him. That's what he told his disciples, and they were all aware that they would have to sacrifice their life. Or at least they were all told that. Some of them die of old age. Um, some of them have some crazy accounts. We haven't even gotten into it yet. We're kind of going to ease into it. I'm gonna tease you a little bit on that. Let's see. Paul says, through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. Oh no, that was Paul in Asia. But yeah, let's see. Here's a couple of verses about persecution in the New Testament. It wasn't just isolated to Acts and a couple of other books. It's all throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. In Hebrews it says Hebrews 11:33 through 38 says, "Who through faith conquered kingdoms, enforced justice, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the power of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, were made strong out of weakness." I think Peter was helped out of prison whenever somebody else was killed. Maybe it was Stephen, but he was helped out by some angels that helped him avoid all these hundreds of guards that were surrounding him. Helped just magic him out of there, and then the other guy was martyred. Let's see. Were made strong out of weakness, became mighty in war, put foreign armies to flight. Women received back their dead by resurrection. Some were tortured, refusing to accept release so that they might rise again to a better life. Others suffered mocking and flogging, and even chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two, they were killed with the sword. They went about in skins of sheep and goats. That they would put animal skins on the back of people in the Colosseum and release wild animals after them. It was more likely that the wild dogs and wolves and bears and ostriches and whatever else they had in there would be attracted to it. Let's see. Oh, destitute, afflicted, mistreated, of whom the world was not worthy, wandering about in deserts and mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. Just saying that Christians were having to run and hide, and we know that by the archaeological findings at Qumran, that Christians were running and hiding. They weren't voluntarily embracing death. The ones that were being persecuted, when they were being persecuted, they ran. Let's see. In James, let's see, he says, oh no, I'm sorry, I already read that one. Oh, and all through Revelation, Christians are told that they have to be witnesses, that they have to witness to their face. This is do not fear what you are about to suffer. The devil is about to throw some of you into prison that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. In fact, Stephen actually means crown, and when Stephen died, he was actually given a crown. That's really, it's just one of those Greek things, you know. Let's see. So whoever was a martyr, they they knew they were facing a violent death, right? I said it in the text, like it's no, like it was, even if it wasn't as bad as it was, they made it seem like it was as bad as they say it is, like being sawn in two, being burned. But there are these people who don't feel the fire, and that they don't feel the blade, and that through their faith, they hear these stories of people that through their faith are able to go through martyrdom without even crying, without even wincing, or people who have lions laid down at them or refuse to eat them, uh, and it, and all that did was fuel other people. In fact, they had a problem that whenever they would execute a Christian, that they would have problems with people volunteering from the crowds, like saying, "Okay, yeah, take me too. Like I'm next," and they get in line because to be martyred was basically a straight shot to salvation. It was a straight shot to heaven, a straight shot to eternal life, because I mean, what more righteous act is there? Like this is what Jesus commanded. Like this is what Jesus said, and they saw an opportunity out of it. They might have had a bad life or whatever, and so these stories helped people willingly accept this, thinking that if they had enough faith, that it wouldn't hurt, and that they would escape the fire or the edge of the blade or whatever they were enduring. Let's see. But yeah, I don't want to downplay the persecution of the Jews that is in the New Testament and Old Testament. Um, the the Jews, Philip, in fact, was persecuted for being a Jew. That's the reason that he wound up in Samaria in the first place, was because he was hiding, because he was a Jew, because he was being sought out, which the Christians usually were not being sought out in these quote unquote persecutions. It was like if they make it known to you, or if they give you trouble and they do not denounce their faith, and there were even times where they said, look, okay, you don't have to uh, give libations, right? Like just say a prayer to your God for us, like, and we'll be cool, right? And that's essentially what Constantine did with the Edict of Milan, is make a deal with them and say, look, you don't have to go in the temple, you don't have to worship any other god, but you do have to pray on behalf, or pray to your God on behalf of Rome, on behalf of the kingdom, because like this is like it's important to them. And you would still have Christians that would refuse to become citizens. They would refuse to. They would just be difficult, and then just push themselves into martyrdom. It's essentially like Christians today bitching about not having Jesus on Starbucks mugs, and then saying like, you did this to us, like you're persecuting us. Like oh yeah, SJ, I'm yeah, Sonnen 2 is bad. I am not like, I that's awful. But where do you see that happening? I mean, you see that happening in some other text, in other places in the world. You see these horrific things happening, but I mean, you don't. The worst thing that I've seen in this was Nero. Nero would have these late night parties that would start during the day, and whoever was being crucified that day, he would have him crucified on essentially his patio, and they would be wrapped in oil-soaked rags, and whenever night would fall, those who hadn't died already would be burned alive, because they would light the crucified essentially as human torches to light the party. It was really, really awful.
To let a lion loose on Polycarp, but Philip could not do that, for the morning hunts were closed. Then the crowd cried out with one mind that he should burn Polycarp alive. This is quoted in Thompson, 2002, and I have references at christian-apologist.com. Polycarp gazed directly.
Wait, hang on.
But Philip could not do that, for the morning hunts were closed. Then the crowd cried out with one mind that he should burn Polycarp alive. This is quoted in Thompson.
In Thompson. Let's see, I have your blog up, SJ. I did find something really interesting that I wanted to address. See, I don't see a Thompson in your work cited here in your references. Thompson. I don't see that one. But I did see a John C. That you actually cited him a lot. You cited him for, let's see. Oh, well, I guess I can just use the search option, huh? That Bartholomew was flayed to death by a whip, that Andrew was crucified on an egg-shaped cross, not egg-shaped, an X-shaped, that James the Lesser was beaten or stoned to death, Thank you for that. So it is. I mean, just from what SJ has said, it's unknown how James the Lesser was killed, whether he was beaten or stoned to death while praying for his attackers. So you cited John's there. You cited John's in Philip being crucified upside down. You cited him in archaeologists discovering what they believed to be Philip's tomb. You cited him for Matthias reportedly preaching the land of the cannibals. I mean, that's a lot of sources cited, and I just want to show you what that is. Like, that's who you cited. Well, was not a person who wrote an article, but he is an editor-in-chief of National Geographic. But before he was editor-in-chief, he was a wildlife photographer. He has no, he didn't even write any of these articles. He's simply an editor. I mean, why on earth would you cite a National Geographic special issue based on the editor? That's crazy to me. I don't know. I'm probably being petty. It probably is petty, but it blows my mind.
In 2002, and I have references at christian-apologist.com. Polycarp gazed directly at the crowd as he said, "Away with the atheists." He was soon burned at the stake. Okay,
that's not the full story. He didn't just say "away with the atheists." Let me make sure I get it right. Let's see. So essentially, he was given a way out, and he was told. He said, "Look, all you have to do is say, 'Away with you atheists' to the Christians. That's all you have to say is just say, 'Away with the atheists.' Like, that's all you have to say." And he would have been fine. This is after bickering. Like, the guy did not want to kill him. Like, he's like, "Look, man, like, throw me a bone here. Like, help me out." And finally, he's like, "Look, all you have to do is just say, 'Away with you atheist.' Like, that's all you have to say. Just fucking say that." But he turned to the Romans and he said, "Away with you atheist." Like, okay, well, that seals your ticket right there, buddy. Like, how can you call that a martyrdom? Like, that is sticking your finger up a rabid dog's butthole. Like, you're asking for trouble. Like, what? I just don't see how you can call that a martyrdom.
Atheist is a term that people used if you were considered non-Christians or non-pagans. Among the martyrs at Lyons was Sanctus, whose body bore witness to his sufferings, being all one bruise and one wound, stretched and distorted out of any recognizable human shape. But Christ's suffering in him achieved great glory, overwhelming the adversary and showing as an example to all the others that nothing is to be feared where the Father's love is, nothing painful where we can find Christ's glory. The slave girl, Blandina, after being tortured, was hung on a post and exposed as food for the wild beasts that were let loose on her.
That's called crucifixion. That was a common form of execution by the Romans. Stoning, hanging, beheading. This was just another form. It was just a more vicious form, a more humiliating form.
She seemed to hang there in the form of a cross, and with their physical eyes, they, the other martyrs, saw in the person of their sister him who was crucified for them. This is quoted again from the early martyrdom of Polycarp by
The martyrdom of Polycarp. What year was that written, SJ? You said early. You said in here that it was early. But that the other texts that I had were not. You didn't consider those to be early. Let's see. I thought I had it here in my list, the martyrdom of Polycarp. It might be so late that it's not even on my list. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Sorry I'm unprepared for this, guys. I guess I'm being petty now. Well, it's talking about Polycarp, so it's second century. Let's see. Martyrdom of Polycarp, 4th century. 4th century. So this is over 200 years, almost 300 years after these events take place, and you consider this to be an early text, SJ? I wouldn't consider that an early text.
Thompson in 2002. Roman Empire, Decius, in 201, he ruled from 201 to
Decius was a dickhole. Let me just preface that with that.
251, instituted what was considered to be the first organized persecution of Christians throughout the Roman Empire, according to Scar 1995.
Right.
Oh
shit, well, that sucks. So up until that point, the persecution of Christians was spotty, and it was only done in certain places. Like you heard earlier, they were saying, they're persecuting people in Asia Minor. It was very sporadic, much like the Apologists would say that the Inquisition was, and the Crusades were. It was spotty. It would only happen in certain places. It wasn't official. It was just people taking stuff into their own hands. That's essentially what this was. Proconsuls and governors of certain areas that were acting on their own authority instead of using their chain of command. Let's see, where were we? That's Polycarp.
The emperors Diocletian, Maximian, so the laws went into abeyance, went into hiding. Sacrifice resulted in the martyrdom of some Christians. Christians had been more sporadic and local. Decius required that all citizens to perform a sacrifice to the Roman gods and the well-being of the emperor in the presence of the Roman magistrate. The magistrate then issued a signed and witnessed certificate. Refusal to make this sacrifice resulted in the martyrdom of some Christians.
Right, so this certificate was essentially your the only way that you could buy food, the only way that you could do anything. You couldn't do anything without this piece of paper. In fact, a lot of Christians would have it forged. They would have these papers forged, or they would commit apostasy, go and get the papers, and they return to their religion. And there are a lot of sources for that, SJ, if you are planning on asking for those. Let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh yeah, so this is most likely what started the whole thing with in Revelation with the mark of the beast, accepting the Roman coin with Nero's head on it. Nero was considered the Antichrist because of the persecutions by the Christians. He was considered the Antichrist. In fact, they were scared when he died that he was going to rise again. In fact, when they were talking about the dragons with the multiple heads, it says one of them has a mortal wound, but that it would be resurrected, or it would come back. Essentially, they thought that he was the Antichrist and was going to return. But yeah, so they not only would they not do it, but they but they told other Christians that they could not do it. Said if you cannot do that. We will excommunicate you if you give libations at this temple. Doesn't matter if you believe it or not. All they wanted you to do was to say some fucking words and pour some grain or some water or some wine or just a little something out of a bowl into another bowl for something that you don't believe in. Like how, like I just, dear Lord, bless us today. I just pray that you be with everybody in the chat, God, and that you just touch everybody's heart, Lord, that they may know you and come closer to know you and your Son, Jesus. We love you in Jesus' name, amen. See, I can do that. Is it cringy? Fuck yeah, it's cringy. But it doesn't hurt me. But Christians would not do that and told other Christians that they could not do that.
Such as Babylas of Antioch, Alexander of Jerusalem, and Pope Fabian. Others, such as Bishop Cyprian of Carthage, went into hiding. The next emperor, Gallienus, paid less attention to Christianity, so the laws went into abeyance. They were
Why was Polycarp killed, SJ?
resurrected again with Diocletian, who came into office in 284. In 303, Emperors Diocletian, Maximian, Galerius, and Constantius issued a series of edicts that rescinded Christians' legal rights and required compliance with traditional.
It didn't rescind their legal rights. It told them that they had to do this. Basically, Christians were asking for special favors. They wanted to they wanted to be special and have these laws that would only apply to them and say, oh no, this is my toy and nobody else can play with this, and if I can't have it, then I'm going to get angry. So angry, in fact, that I'm going to make you so mad you're going to want to kill me. Yes, I've heard of Nabil Qureshi. Was it David? David. Oh, I'm skipping out on his last name. He was his roommate in college. David Wood, I believe is his name. He's a Christian apologist.
Pagan religious practices. That ended when Constantine, who's pictured down on the bottom.
Of course they wanted to live, SJ, but that's not what they were commanded. That's not what they were commanded to do. That's not what they were told was good and righteous. I told you earlier that they ran, that they didn't want to be caught. They didn't welcome death with open arms like a good martyr should or would. Yeah, I mean, you see martyrs today with their beliefs who take it upon themselves to die. You see people setting themselves on fire to protest social injustice. But it took them running and then finally saying, okay, all right, you got me. But if some angels don't help me out of here real quick, then I guess I'm going to have to die.
Bottom left.
Yes, I heard the part about the banquet and the narrow door, the dream that he had, that he dreamed that there was a narrow door and he opened it up and behind it there was a huge feast, and that he said that he something along the lines of that when he woke up that he knew that that was the narrow path and that there was this great gift waiting for him on this other side of the door. I just think that he had a dream about being in a dollhouse maybe, or a dream. I mean, I've had dreams where my perception is skewed, where like my dad seemed to be 80 feet tall and I seem to be like 2 feet tall, just like crazy, whatever. But yeah.
Came into office in 306 AD. Constantine restored Christians to full legal equality and returned property to them that had been confiscated. In 313, he signed the Edict of Milan, which offered Christians a comprehensive acceptance. Constantine himself had converted to Christianity when he had a vision of a Christian.
Mr. Shadowkey, that's awesome. That's great. You can get enough of them, you can buy a wife. I can show you scripture for that.
Symbol, which helped him to win a battle and a seat as the Roman emperor. Thank God for Constantine.
Yeah, because without Constantine, you wouldn't have Christianity. Without it being made the official religion and having people being given this vested interest in being empowered by the emperor to make these make these changes to orthodoxy and whatnot, and have these councils to vote on things and to secretly do it behind somebody's back or do it before they could get there or threaten them not to come and get it passed anyways. It was essentially politics. Um, it's like saying that that the United States is a Republican nation. Like we're a Trump world, SJ. We are a Trump world. No, we're not. That's just the popular opinion. That's just what got us here today. That's just the succession of events that got us where we are.
In the book of Acts 5:34 to 39, Luke records the prescient words of a Pharisee called Gamaliel.
Hmm.
But a Pharisee named Gamaliel, a teacher of the law, who was burned by all the people, stood up in the Sanhedrin and ordered that the men he put us outside for a little while. Then he addressed the Sanhedrin. Men of Israel, consider carefully what you intend to do to these men. He's referring, of course, to Peter and the apostles.
SJ, that's according to the Christian Encyclopedia, the Christian World Encyclopedia, the Christian Global Encyclopedia, or something like that. That's again, that's only the best number that you can find. I challenge you to find what scholars say is the lowest possible amount of Christians.
Some time ago, Theudas appeared, claiming to be somebody, and about 400 men rallied to him. He was killed. All his followers were dispersed, and it came to nothing.
Wait, his followers were dispersed. Where'd they go? Surely they didn't run. They didn't escape an attempt to be, or an opportunity to be martyred. This is Galilee, that he stood up in the Sanhedrin. He stood up before the Jewish High Council and said, "Men of Israel, consider carefully what you intend to do to these men." Some time ago, Theudas appeared, claiming to be somebody, and about 400 men rallied to him. He was killed, all his followers dispersed, and it all came to nothing. And it all came to nothing. But 400 men rallied to him. I mean, do you think that the apostles were the first people to welcome death because of their belief, because of their persecution? It doesn't even have to be a theological belief. I've seen people that are hated on, that are beaten and just made fun of because they're like Pentecostals, for example. My sisters couldn't cut their hair. They couldn't wear makeup. They wore long denim skirts. They wore 3/4 length sleeves. No jewelry, no TV, no secular music, and we got made fun of. I wore my hair kind of like it is now, except my hair would be too long to go into a Pentecostal church because this is backsliding right here. Hair on the sides need to be a little bit shorter. Hair on top needs to be shorter. Need to have a nice little part on the side. Need to wear a button-up shirt tucked in. Need to wear slacks. You come into God's house dressed and ready for worship. And I got made fun of for that. I was persecuted by other Christians, SJ. I was ostracized by other Christians. I wasn't allowed to sit with other Christians at the lunch table because to them, I wasn't Christian. I was weird. And I can guarantee you at 13 and 14, it had nothing to do with theological differences. It had to do with superstitio, I guess you could call it. Just things that are just weird practices. Just like, why would you do that? Like, speaking in tongues? Like, what is that? No, I have Jesus in my heart. I don't speak in tongues. You're just crazy. But persecution and oppression is not exclusive to Christianity, not by a long shot.
After him, Judas the Galilean appeared in the days of the census and led a band of people in revolt. He too was killed, and all his followers were.
Okay, was he killed for his belief, or was he killed because he led a revolt? These are not martyrdoms. These are men going to war, SJ. You can call it a jihad if you want. Whether or not it has the best of intentions, or you think that they're going to a good place, they're starting shit. But however you want to look at it.
Were scattered. Therefore, in the present case, I advise you, leave these men alone. Let them go. For if their purpose or activity is of human origin, it will fail. But if it is from God, you will not be able to stop these men. You will find yourself fighting against God. The triumph of Christianity. In terms of world historical significance, few developments can rival the enduring impact of the triumph of Christianity.
Christianity is only successful because of Constantine, because it was made the official religion of Rome, and because Alexander the Great had just essentially steamrolled the entire place a few hundred years before, 500 years before, and it was just all these new roads, all these new trade routes. The Bible was being shared in different languages. People were learning different languages. New theologies were being developed. New Gnostic teachings were being developed. It's not exclusive to Christianity. Christianity won the popular vote. That is all there is to it. That does not mean that it's the best candidate or the only candidate, or even demonstrates the need for a candidate.
Within the Roman world, according to Bryant in 1993, Christianity is now the most widespread religion in the world, with over 2 billion followers. It is the only.
But how's that doing? What are they on pace to hit for this year? How many churches are they closing? And I'm not talking about China. Let's talk about home. I know not everybody in my live stream is from the United States, but you and I are, SJ. This video is about us. This is mine, your video. This is our moment. Do you think the United States is a Christian nation? Do you think that Christianity is progressing? That Christian values are dominating in the United States? And if you say yes, I would like for you to do something really simple. Just point out, let's say, 7 of the 10 commandments in our legislature.
Only religion that is not centered around the location of its origin. And it is the only religion with an act.
We're not talking about anecdotal evidence now, SJ. Well, I'm glad that your church is growing. That's great. I'm glad that you have a community that's giving something back positive enough where people feel like they can contribute back to it. But overall, churches are losing out. People are finding new ways to get community and realizing that they don't need religion to find fulfillment from the positive things that Christianity and religion and other religions provide.
Active, personal Lord who loves and forgives his children. What is also notable is to consider the Bible, which is a collection of 66 books written in 3 continents and 3 languages, over 1,500 years by 40.
I'm going to let you slide on that, SJ. I'm going to let you slide.
Or more authors. The fact the Bible is so cohesive and we have no provable contradictions within it's almost a miracle in and of itself. The Guinness Book of World Records listed the Bible as the world's best-selling book. Quote, although it is impossible to obtain exact figures, there is to get audiences.
Son of a bitch. Well, it's easy to be the best-selling book when you're giving it away for free, right?
World. It was written by 45 academics from all around the world from very prestigious universities. The historical atlas states as follows.
The historical atlas. That's where you got it from.
Was the foundation of Christianity as we
know. But I think
it.
it's the Christian
Rather
historical atlas.
Scared,
I don't think it's just the
Jesus'
historical
followers
atlas.
grew into the thousands. The early church ran into very strong opposition in Jerusalem, and around 35 great persecution took place there. Around this time, one of the most decisive turning points in world history occurred. The early church began to accept those who were of non-Jewish origins.
Wait, when did they start accepting people who were non-Jewish?
Around 35 great persecution took place there.
Around 35.
Around this time, one of the most
So about 2 to 4 years after the death of Jesus. So why wasn't the church always concerned about the Gentiles? Why wasn't the gift of Jesus' salvation available to everybody? Why did it take Paul to do that?
decisive turning points in world history occurred. The early church began to accept those who were of non-Jewish origins. And they went on to say, despite persecutions for the next 150 years, the new Christian church spread into France, Spain, North Africa, and Mesopotamia. The once small sect devoted Jesus.
Well, you're acting like the persecution that was going on was somehow negatively countering or outweighing the population of these sects, which was interesting because the early Christianity was really tribal, and they kind of developed their own little house communities to themselves. And you see a lot of early marriages, a lot of babies. It's they are just basically Jews with a mission now, like Jews with some motivation. Jews with a newfound purpose. But they're called Christians.
Jesus Christ grew between 5 and 6 million by 300. By 350, the number of Christians in the Roman Empire was over 33 million, and Christianity had become a universal religion. In other words,
again, that 33 million number and the 5 to 6 million number, I encourage you to not seek out the ones that best support your position, or the ones that are that give the most credence to your belief. I challenge you to find the things that would possibly make you question. Like, try to find the worst examples against your religion. That's how you truly test your belief. You don't test your belief by exploring the things that best support your position. You gain you gain a strength in your conviction whenever you truly test your faith, and you can't test your faith in the shallow end. I'm sure you've heard that before.
In other words, between 5 and 6 million Christians were willing to worship Jesus without any legal protections in the first few hundred years. They worshiped.
Okay, again, the legal protections. I mean, nobody had legal protections. There was no, like, the Hellenists weren't safe. Nobody was safe. If Rome was if Rome was mad at you and you violated Rome's laws, then you suffered Rome's wrath. Like, that's just how it was. Is it fair? Is it right? No, not at all. But that's how it is. You can't characterize something as being a martyrdom when you have people who are not being asked to rescind their faith. They're not given an opportunity to, or to recant. And they're not doing it willfully. They're not doing it with open arms. They're not willfully accepting it. But the ones that do willfully accept it, which I'm about to go into, are the ones who are the most fantastic and the most mythologized and the most out of these world concepts that you'll ever think of. Just give me 1 second and I'm going to tell you about how somebody got crucified and then made the ground swallow 7,000 people. Y'all stay tuned. Share this out. Like it. I know I'm rambling, but if you honestly like it, just give me a little,
very peacefully, unlike the early Muslims who began their
religion. SJ with the Muslim dig. Oh, I like that, SJ. That was just like a little Muslims. Like, oh man, that empire was a very strong empire. I guess you could say they very similar to Alexander the Great. And the Christians got into it with them whenever they started interrupting with the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. They started messing with the pilgrims who were trying to make that journey, and which necessitated the Crusaders and the Crusades, and then that developed into a shitstorm.
Early in the 4th century, Constantine had a vision of a Christian symbol, which led to a battle victory, and as we noted earlier, the legalization of Christianity.
Yeah, yeah. It's let me the Cairo, the symbol for Chi and the symbol for rho in Greek. It kind of made a uh, uh, I draw it for you. I'm on this video's already longer than it should be. I'm going to keep going, but look it up. It's C. Let's see, Kairo. Maybe RH. No, RO.
Skeptics believe the early Christians.
Hey, no fighting in my chat. Like, I mean, I'm the only one who's allowed to like snub people and give them the thumb. Uh, uh, I don't know what anybody's difference is, but all I ask is that if you can't get along, then don't get along, and just admit it. And if you can't, be adults and be in the same chat without like throwing a marshmallow at them or whatever, then is it worth it? In 5 years, is this chat gonna matter? It's not. Like, let's just be humans.
Believed in Christ, but they were mistaken. They often claim they either had a vision or a mass hallucination. Does it seem reasonable to determine that millions of early Christians would risk their lives by worshiping illegally to follow a vision or hallucination by a handful of fishermen, a tax collector, and a tent maker named Paul? Furthermore, hallucinations are internal, like dreams. They aren't shared between people. It is the independently attested.
Well, I would disagree, SJ. When you see Benny Hinn and he has people lined up on his stage and he's swinging his jacket and people by the handfuls are falling down and getting thrown back and being hit with the Holy Spirit that is Benny Hinn's blazer, is that a mass hallucination? I would say that's either a mass hallucination or all of those people are mentally ill, or maybe some sort of mass hysteria, some sort of a psychological effect in which they all kind of forced to share these same beliefs, like much like what I would consider speaking in tongues to be, or feeling the Holy Ghost at church.
Tested claims by multiple people that Jesus appeared to his disciples, apostles, and crowds over a 40-day period after his resurrection. That's what compelled early Christians. Some of the examples of his miracles I will list now. He turned water into wine. He healed an official's son without going to see the boy. He healed a crippled man on the Sabbath. He fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish.
Wait. Does it make it any better that it was on the Sabbath? Like, is that like it was on the Sabbath? He's not even supposed to work, and he did it. Like, gotta be like that's the dude right there. Like, I can't even pick up sticks without getting stoned, and this dude's over here healing people. Like, it's cray. Am I right? Sorry, I'm typing in the chat.
He walked on water. He healed a man born blind. He raised Lazarus from the dead. He healed a bleeding woman. He calmed a storm. He healed a paralyzed man. And of course, the most important of all, he resurrected himself from the dead. Paul, the author of between 6 and 13 New Testament books, offers one of the most compelling stories of a...
Wait a minute. If he raised himself from the dead, then why did he pray to himself? Depending on which one you look at it, it's like, will you, and then another one's like, could you, or if you could. But Jesus is praying to himself essentially in the Garden of Gethsemane. He says, if it is in your will, or if you are able, remove this cup from me, like remove this burden from me. Like, I don't want to do this. But he resurrected himself. So he didn't force himself to die for man's sins, but he made himself resurrect.
A transformation. Paul was on the road to Damascus in his effort to identify and arrest early Christians for.
All right, y'all are just trying to make me blush now. Y'all just calm, like, calm your titties, like shit. Thanks a lot. That really means a lot. I'm not the best person in the world. I would never claim that I am. I've fucked up in life, but I just want to see the world be a better place. And I mean, I try not to come off as a dick, and I'm sorry if I like did come off as a dick when I like kind of snapped earlier, but I don't know. I don't know. I just want to foster a community where people like SJ and like Sweet Heathen can stand shoulder to shoulder, and I don't want to say and learn, but and just experience life without feeling that need, that urge to just fucking it's like it doesn't matter what's around you. Like there's so many other directions, and there's beauty in every direction. So if there's something ugly in one direction, just turn your ass around.
Illegal worship. According to the book of Acts, it says Saul was breathing out murderous threats against the Lord's disciples. He went to the high priest and asked him for letters to the synagogues. And
why don't you call him Saul all the time? Like, Saul was just his Jewish name, and Paul's just his Greek name. Like, it didn't change. Like, it's just a different way to say it. The same name. I don't know why you insist on calling him Saul in the Old Testament, or I'm sorry, Saul while he's persecuting Christians, but Paul after the road to Damascus experience. It's like, what the fuck? Just, I don't know. I mean, if that's the name that he wants to go by, I guess that's his thing, But I don't know. But tomorrow I want to be James. Just so everybody knows, I want to be James tomorrow.
In Damascus, so that if he found any there who belonged to the way, whether men or women, he might take them as prisoners to Jerusalem. As he neared Damascus on his journey, suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say to him, "Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me?" Paul said, "Who are you, Lord?" "I am Jesus, whom you are persecuting." Paul immediately.
Who are you, Master? Who are you, Master? He felt like he needed to submit to this light, to this. Maybe she'll read all of it. I don't know. If not, I'll tell you the other part.
Immediately converted to the way and became one of its most ardent followers, who ended up being beaten, imprisoned, and eventually.
Okay, and she didn't. But the other people who were with him, they said that they saw nothing. They didn't see a light. They didn't hear a voice. Nothing. And then, but Paul has this vision. It's like who was the other guy that was persecuted and essentially martyred? Joseph Smith. He was killed. He was beaten to death by an angry mob, but he believed that he could put his head in his hat, and there is tablets of gold in there that he could interpret, and those were the divine revelation of God. Now, SJ, isn't that silly? SJ, I bet that we have one thing in common, and that is we both laugh our asses off at Mormons and their magical underwear. But this is a sincerely held belief that he had, and his followers were willing to be persecuted for it as well. Mormons today are still persecuted. As a matter of fact, even Christians, are just like, no. Like, I've seen Protestants and Catholics get along better than I have any Christian sect and Mormons.
Eventually beheaded, all in Jesus' name. In 2 Corinthians 16:26-27, Paul writes, "I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from river."
Why is he constantly on the move? Why is he saying that he's in danger? Is he on the move with purpose, or is he running from something, SJ? This is Paul we're talking about.
In danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger in this.
Oh no, no, not all of Joseph Smith's people denied him. He still had a following, a very loyal following. In fact, hello, Mormons, they're everywhere.
City, in danger in the country, in danger at sea. And
Oh yeah, SJ, what if Joseph Smith was fulfilling the prophecy, the prophecy that Jesus fulfilled, where it says that his own people will reject him, that he'll be ugly and rejected. That's I mean, maybe Joseph Smith is the Messiah. I'm gonna have to look into that.
in danger from
We're gonna have to apply the Daniel 70 year prophecy to that.
false believers. I have labored and toiled and have gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I have been cold and naked. In 2 Corinthians 12:10 he adds, that is why for Christ's sake I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships.
So he delights in it. He delights in weakness. He delights in these hardships. He delights in all these tragedies that befall him and his people. Why? Because it's good. Because it's right. Because it's righteous. Because that is what it's going to take to save you, and it is a one-way ticket to glory. It is a one-way ticket to eternal life, to your crown. In fact, Stephen gets his crown and fulfills his namesake. Don't you think that's a little ironic that his name is crown, and he was crowned? I think that's funny.
In persecutions, in difficulties, for when I am weak, then I am made strong. Clearly, Paul was not living an easy life once he decided to follow Jesus. Some skeptics have argued that the early Christian disciples were mistaken, delusional, or were profiting from Christianity in some material way. Yet they failed to consider basic psychology. They also failed to consider the early disciples reaped no material rewards, no sex, no power, no money.
Whatever. SJ, how did they get to 33 million without sex and power and money? First of all, you got to have sex to make the kids, power to control them, and money to feed them. Like, how did you get to 33 million without having sex? Like, was it like the priests are celibate? Like, is that like? I mean, come on, like, it's just not happening. That's not real life. It's Grand Theft Auto, SJ.
We have no indication they were not of sound minds. They were martyred for their beliefs. Yet they were in the position to know whether their beliefs were true. For this reason, comparing them to modern-day martyrs, such as the 9/11 hijackers, is faulty. Muslim extremists believed what others had told them. No Muslims have seen the risen Allah. It says that.
SJ, the vast majority of the Christian martyrs up through the 4th century, up until Constantine, up until the Edict of Milan in 313, the vast majority of the martyrdom of the martyrs, by far, and the most best accredited accounts of martyrdom, are by people who never saw Jesus and never even met a disciple. Isn't that interesting?
Specifically in the Quran. Consider this. People of sound minds make decisions that maximize their outcomes. They also weigh benefits against drawbacks when making decisions. The early Christians wanted to maximize their chances of going to heaven by following Jesus.
But they also wanted to maximize their chances of living, SJ. And are you aware of the many accounts of Christians committing apostasy and leaving the faith until things cooled off, and then coming back and being like, hey guys, I changed my mind, like, it's cool. But like, these other Christians are supposedly sitting here sweating it out, getting persecuted. It's really strange. Oh, thank you guys. Yeah, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. I'm really trying to build subscribers. Hopefully, now that I've changed my name from Disciple of Kairos to Jim Majors, I'll get some more subs. Apparently, one of the complaints was that people couldn't find me by my name, that they know me by, most people know me by Jim Majors, and yeah, so it was probably a little silly of me to try to adopt a new moniker or whatever. But I don't know. I thought it was something to try out. But yeah, sorry. Just yeah, like and share if you haven't, and subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you like the live streams, I'll be doing more of them just because I'm trying video editing and I'm sucking at it. So there's that.
Early Christians weighed the benefits of going to heaven and following Jesus against the risks of imprisonment and death. Had early Christians determined the risks outweighed the benefits and
Peter, Paul, and James. I would love to talk about Peter, Paul, and James. This is going to make me very happy. Let's see. Peter. Okay, I'm guessing you're talking about the James, the son of Zebedee, the one in Acts 12:2. I'm guessing that's the one. So I'm going to skip that one until, let's see, Peter, Paul, and James. Okay, so Peter's death is in the New Testament quite a few times, but nowhere in there does it say how Peter dies. The story of him being crucified upside down to fulfill Jesus' prophecy, blah blah blah, is in the apocryphal, the non-canonical Acts of Peter that were written in the mid to late 2nd century. SJ. So this is what you said, right, about Peter being crucified upside down, and the earliest tradition that we have of that, the earliest text that we have of that, is from an apocryphal source. For those who don't know about the Acts of Peter, I'm not going to go into it too much because that's a video all on its own. But he in the Acts of Peter, he raises a fish from the dead, a dead fish. As a matter of fact, they're smoked fish that had already been smoked. Simon Magus is this flying magician who has powers, magical powers, and so they do wizard fighting. It's some pretty weird stuff, actually. It kind of makes me want to just skim through the text and find one of these things, just because nobody's going to believe me if I just say what I remember. That would be weird. Okay, it's right around here. It's a really interesting text. It's a really short read. You can read it in a couple of hours or less. It's really interesting. Okay, here we go. Peter, there is a great contention between Simon and the dog whom thou sentest. He sent a dog to to Simon. It says, for Simon saith to the dog, say that I am not here. Unto whom the dog saith more than thou didst charge him, and when he hath accomplished the mystery which thou didst command him, he shall die at thy feet. But Peter said, and thou also, devil, whosoever thou art, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, go out of that young man and hurt him not at all. Show thyself unto all that stand here. When the young man heard it, he ran forth and caught hold on a great statue of marble which was set in the court of the house, and broke it into pieces with his feet. It was the statue of Caesar, and he broke it into pieces with his feet. Oh, this is after the talking dog, right? Like, this isn't even like the craziest part. This is a ridiculous text, and it's a late text, right? According to you, SJ, this is a late text. I don't know. I mean, I really dislike it whenever something is good sometimes, but it's not good all the time. You know, it's kind of like that guy who has that side chick, you know, because they have really good sex, but he doesn't really like her personality, but he just kind of keeps her around. He's like, oh, I just like you for this one thing, but I don't want all of you. I'm not going to accept all of you. I would say that, unless you already have a pre-arranged arrangement or whatever, an agreement on how that relationship is supposed to go, and you're just using them for one thing, that's wrong, isn't it? Like, isn't that cheating? Are you cheating on the Bible, SJ? Do you have side Bibles? Let's see what else. Paul. Oh, Paul. Oh, Paul. The earliest one from Paul is from the mid-2nd century again, and it's from. If you guessed I was going to say an apocryphal text, then you are absolutely right, and you win mustache monies. You win 5 mustache monies, because that's exactly what it is, and it's the Acts of Paul, which is an even crazier freaking text than the apocryphal Acts of Peter. I'm going to read to you from the Acts of Paul about Paul's execution from Emperor Nero. Paul stood with his face to the east and lifted up his hands into heaven and prayed a long time, and in his prayer he conversed in the Hebrew tongue with the fathers. Paul spoke in Hebrew. And in his prayer he conversed in the Hebrew tongue with the fathers, and then stretched forth his neck without speaking. And when the executioner struck off his head, milk, I'm talking vitamin D, milk spurted out of his neck upon the cloak of the soldier. And the soldier and all that were there present, when they saw it, marveled and glorified God, which had given such glory unto Paul. And they went and told Caesar what was done. They said, Caesar, this motherfucker had milk coming out his neck. Jesus got stabbed in the side by a spear, and he had water come out. This motherfucker had milk. Like, he filled my Cheerios, my bowl overrunneth. Like, I am not worthy of the 2% that he gives me. Like, it's milk shot out of his neck. And you're using this as a source of truth as to whether we can determine whether or not these people were martyred and how they were martyred. Okay, I'm gonna look at the chat. Let's see. Do I think that Jesus' early apostles were persecuted? Some of them. They were chased, obviously. Paul said that he was running. He was running from something. Do I think that he was persecuted for his faith, for being a Christian? No. Well, why? Why would they be persecuted for being Christian? Because they're professing the gospel of Jesus and he really was the Messiah and rose from the dead and we all got to keep it a secret? A big Roman secret? No. No. There were no secrets. No secrets. All there were things that came in post, the original story. Like, it's like, hey, that's a good story we came up with, but you know what would make it better? If we put guards at the tomb. So like we could be like, there's no way they could have stolen the body, right? Because there were guards there. That's awesome. Just hope that nobody looks at the earliest text and notice that that's not original. And the women running away from the tomb screaming in Mark, yeah, we're just going to add on to that too. And we're just going to use that to develop the rest of this text, the rest of the New Testament, which is going to help develop the rest of the Old Testament, which will help develop the rest of the Old Testament. Can I explain their motivations? Their motivations for being persecuted? They had no motivations for being persecuted. They were who they were, and they ran for it. There are people who live in in states that are not legal states. Thankfully, I live in a legal state. But there are people who don't that smoke weed, and they smoke weed every day, knowing that the cops are going to show up any second, knowing that all it's going to take is a knock at their door to get them sent to jail, to get a hefty fine, to get a distribution charge, to get their children taken away, and they do it anyways. Does that mean that weed is at the same level of Jesus because people are willing to be persecuted so they can puff pass? I mean, that doesn't make much sense to me. Oh, and get this. That's not even the best part of Paul's martyrdom. All of the other accounts of his martyrdom, he's buried at the church where he's beheaded, or at least his head is. That's still church tradition. But his head bounced 3 times. Boom, 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 when he lobbed it off. And did you know that every single place that Paul's head hit, a fountain sprung up from the ground? That's right. A well. This is a freshwater well. Psh, 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 3 times. And when he rolled, it just kind of puddled up a little bit. And those fountains are still there today. They're called Tres Fontaines, I believe. And you can still go there today and see them. They have place marks over it, over the wells, which still have running water, but I think they're covered to protect the water. I guess they were worried about pollution or whatever, because apparently it's not that holy. And but the funny thing is that there's writings about these 3 wells, these 3 fountains that exist way before Paul, hundreds of years before Paul. Isn't that strange how there can be this tradition that these fountains are there because an apostle was beheaded, something very serious, and milk and milk came out of his neck, and 3 fountains came up, one from each spot that his head bounced. We have to take that seriously, okay? All right. But SJ, why didn't you say that? Why didn't you mention that part? Why didn't you mention that milk came out of his neck? Well, why didn't I don't understand that. Let's see. All right. This is going to be a good one. Let's talk about we're going to talk about all of them anyways. I just don't want to give up the good ones. I guess we'll talk about Philip. Philip's martyrdom. SJ, do you know where Philip's martyrdom is? Anybody? If you guess the apocryphal Acts of Philip, you got a fucking gold star and 5 more mustache monies, because that's exactly where it is, and it is not in an early text. SJ, the martyrdom account of Philip comes from the early 4th to the late 4th century. 300, 400 years after this happened. So, in this one, Paul has some beef with some people who are worshiping some dragons. In Hierapolis, they have their snake deity. And that's right, it wasn't Philip and Stephen, it was Philip and Bartholomew, because Philip and Bartholomew were going to be killed. They got captured and they were going to be killed. But Philip, right before he dies, he opens up a black hole inside of Hierapolis, and it swallows the proconsul, his house, the temple of the serpent, which still is there today, and 7,000 men, pagans to be specific, 7,000 pagans Those heathens, those heathen dragon worshippers try to martyr me. I'm not going to take my martyrdom quietly. I'm going to show them God's power, and I'm going to just open up a gaping hole and just swallow this temple, and all these people. Like, that is crazy, right? Well, my question was, why didn't you mention the milk coming out of Paul's neck, or the fountains sprouting up from each spot that his head bounced, or Philip, um, uh, I'm sorry, not Stephen, Philip. Philip means duh. Uh, Philip and Stephen are the ones who got the crown of martyrdom, right? Stephen means crown, but Philip got his after he opened up a gaping hole in Hierapolis that swallowed the serpent temple and 7,000 pagans. That's pretty hilarious, right? And Bartholomew, for some reason, let's see, how did you say that Bartholomew died? I forgot. Let me go back here. I've got him written down this nifty little. Okay, you said that he was flayed to death by a whip, but you didn't say where. Why didn't you say where? Like with James, you didn't say how he died. You didn't say how it happened with Peter. You just said that he was crucified upside down. But you left out quite a few juicy details that I think would be very, very convincing if you were there. You would certainly think that there was something holy going on there, right? Let's see. Okay, so Stephen, like I've already said that Stephen in Greek means crown. That's what Jesus said that martyrs would receive. They would receive a crown. But Stephen, much like James, he wasn't martyred. He wasn't stoned because he was saying that Jesus was his Lord and Savior. He wasn't stoned for having for not giving libations. You can't just claim that he's being martyred when he's not being martyred. Same thing with James. The same thing with I mean, well, maybe you could say that Peter was martyred, but he opened up a big hole and swallowed 7,000 people. So I think that's a net negative. And Matthias. Matthias is the one who supposedly took the place of Judas, who, if we are depending on Papias, he actually survived a long time, and he had like a gross penis and stuff like that. Is what what Papias says, or I believe it's Eusebius quoting Papias, as we don't have any extant Papias manuscripts left. But it says that they tried to hang him. It didn't work, and so he was just miserable, and he walked around all of his days, and it says long enough for him to get fat, overweight, covered in boils, had a gross-looking penis, and then got ran over by a chariot, and his guts spilled out. And that actually, I think, is probably more likely, don't you? Being as it fixes a complication, a contradiction in the text. But then you have this person who knew Jesus and didn't kill himself. He lived out his life not being a Christian. Like I find that to be very, very interesting. Let's see. Oh, actually, yeah, I have the text right here. It says, this is Papias. Judas walked about as an example of godlessness in this world, having been bloated so much in the flesh that he could not go through where a chariot goes easily. Damn, he was wider than a chariot. it says, indeed, not even his swollen head by itself. He couldn't even get his head through where the chariot goes easily. Papias is full of shit. I gotta say that. But for the lids of his eyes, they say, were so puffed that he could not see the light, and his own eyes could not be seen, not even by a physician with optics. Such depth had they from the outer apparent surface. Man, this Papias has a hard-on for this guy. It's hilarious. And get this. This is the best part. And his genitalia appeared more disgusting and greater than all formlessness. And he bore through them from his whole body flowing pus and worms. And to his shame, these things alone were forced. And after many tortures and torments, they say, when he had come to his end in his own place, not after he got Jesus killed and died in the potter's field, but it says after many tortures and torments, when he had come to his end in his own place, from the place became deserted and uninhabited until now from the stench. But not even to this day can anyone go by that place unless they pinch their nostrils with their hands. So great did the outflow from his body spread out upon the earth. That is hardcore. Hardcore. Man. Okay. So let's talk about James, the son of Alphaeus. James, the son of Alphaeus, how did he die? Well, it says here in Josephus, in the Antiquity of the Jews, that the priest Ananus assembled the Sanhedrin of judges and brought them before the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, and when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. So an accusation against them as breakers of the law. What law would they have been breaking? What law was there? Sounds like it's maybe he's evading taxes. Maybe sounds like James, the son of Alphaeus, was a first century Kent Hovind. That's crazy, but that's okay. So James was martyred. Let's say he was martyred for his faith. He went willingly. When it says that the Sanhedrin came before him and formed an accusation and delivered him to be stoned. It says nothing about him accepting it or him recanting a belief. I don't know how you can say that. And there are different sources for that. You got Eusebius, Hegesippus, and all of them have their own little mythologized twist put on it. I won't go over those though. There are other things that are better. So John actually dies of old age, believe it or not. John survives being boiled alive in a vat of oil, something that they would use to torture people, and it was I'm pretty sure it had close to 100% success rate as far as killing people goes, but for some reason to John it didn't hurt him. He was not burned. He lived through it, and they said, "Oh, okay, well we give up." And so then he got to go and write Revelation according to church tradition. So that's interesting. So pot of burning oil didn't kill him, and he dies of old age. Is that a martyrdom? I don't think it is. Let's see. Bartholomew. You said he was flayed alive by the whip. That's where we were going. But where? Let's see. Is it Armenia on the west coast? Or in Rome in Tiber Island, where they say that his body's resting, or is he in India where he died, like Eusebius says? But how did Bartholomew die again? By a whip, right? but I'm reading here that he was beheaded, one that he was drowned, one that he was crucified and then was skinned alive. He was flayed. It doesn't say it was by a whip, and crucified. So was he crucified, or was it wait? So he had to be flayed first and then crucified. While he's crucified, upside down. Let's just say he's upside down, right, for the hell of it, because why not? Because we're gonna be making shit up. We might as well make it up. And then they were dunking a bucket over his head. They were drowning him, and then they chopped his head off. Right? Is that how that happened? Because why didn't just one person say all of that? Why did it take all these people saying the different parts? I mean, I'm stoned, but I think I can kind of see the holes in that. Let's see. Hmm. Okay, James, the son of Zebedee. Let's see, did we talk about him yet? So James, the son of Zebedee, he was in fact giving a chance to recant the belief that Jesus rose from the dead. He was, and he was also imprisoned at this time with Peter, and but this is when Peter's guardian angels come in and help him get past all these guards. It says that there were all these squadrons of Roman centurions that are surrounding his jail cell, and somehow the angels helps him get out, but they just leave James there to die. That's kind of interesting. And he, as it says in Acts, died by the sword. Let's see. But it doesn't say that he was given a chance to recant. There are other later ones, but the earliest one is in Acts, and it doesn't say that he was given a chance to recant. And I think that would be important in order to say that they were martyrs. Let's see. The Apostle Andrew, his comes from, you guessed it, the Acts of Andrew, from the 2nd century. It's a late text, SJ. Says that he was crucified. So 100 years after Andrew is martyred, we find a text saying that he was crucified. Okay, so let's believe that. Let's just say that that's true. Let's look at the rest of the Acts of Andrew. Oh, okay. Wow. Okay, so this guy. Oh, okay. So he brings an earthquake, and he brings an earthquake so that he can kill somebody before they have sex. And then he heals everybody that he hurt in the earthquake. That's interesting. S.J., do you believe that the apostles raised people from the dead? Do you believe that apostles do you believe that apostles thought they were martyrs? In their moments of death, do you believe that they thought they were being persecuted for their faith? And why? Why do you believe that? I don't think that I've covered all of them, but I really don't think that I need to cover all of them. I think I've demonstrated it to be just silly, just completely ridiculous. Because the earliest and best accounts of martyrdom, SJ, are highly mythologized. And you cherry pick from it what traditions you want to keep, and you leave the milk and cookies. You can't leave the milk and cookies.
Considered it all a lie, they would have recanted their testimonies in support of Jesus.
Yes, they would have.
Further, Jesus,
if they were given a chance to
recant,
recant,
speaks to his miracles. If I were going to start a new club or business, I would want to enlist the help of powerful and influential people. I would want
Constantine.
support from people who had the money and visibility needed to help me get the word out. I would choose the best and the brightest, rather than choose the powerful.
something Donald Trump would say. Donald Trump would choose the best and the brightest.
Pharisees, politicians, or other leaders, Jesus chose the weak. He chose fishermen, a tent maker, a tax collector, and others. He healed prostitutes, forgave.
Do you think that being weak is a good quality? Do you think that meekness in time of persecution is a virtue?
Adulterers, and elevated women and children. Women, who were considered second-class citizens in his time, were the first to make the most important discovery in the entire Bible.
I mean, we're talking Second Temple Judaism. That sort of belief system, it was starting to die out. Yeah, they were still misogynistic, but the whole claim of a woman's testimony was not as good as a man. I mean, we see even in the Old Testament, SJ, I can show you scripture where people believed that something was true solely because it came from testament of a woman.
Bible, which is that of the empty tomb. Jesus went against people's
Well, why doesn't Paul talk about an empty tomb, SJ? Why doesn't Paul talk about the ascension? Why doesn't Paul talk about Jesus coming back? Well, you know, how many times has Jesus came back since he left the first time? Once, twice, 3 times a lady. I mean, was it his second coming, his third coming? I mean, which coming was it that he met Paul on the road to Damascus? Was he still hanging out, or had he not really ascended yet?
expectations. Rather than appear with power, glory, and majesty, he appeared in a manger. Rather than work as an earthly,
He didn't appear there. He was put there. You think he just poofed in a manger? He didn't appear there. He appeared to Paul, and Paul says that he appeared to Paul the same way that he appeared to the disciples after his death and appeared to the 500. He uses the exact same terminology to describe his experience as he does theirs.
king,
I don't think that Paul believed in a bodily resurrection.
worked as a humble carpenter. Rather than rub elbows with the Pharisees, who were considered the most devout followers of God, Jesus rubbed elbows with the sinners. Rather than call on his followers to do great works, he has called on us to have faith in him. No other religions are quite like Christianity, which is the way, the truth, and the life.
Oh, I'm gonna have an open hangout after this. If anybody wants to join, I'll put the link in the chat before the stream ends.
According to Jesus, he says, I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace. In this world,
SJ, that means you. I'm not gonna pressure you, but if you would like to join, you are more than welcome, and it will be civil.
you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world.
But we can't talk about anything involving our debate because I can't give you my secrets.
He also said this, Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Thank you so much for coming by. You'll notice over on the right in this particular screen, I also post extra biblical testimony of Jesus. With that alone, we have enough. That's all we need.
The extra biblical testimony of Jesus, that he lived during the time of Tiberius Caesar, not just during the time, but that he was born during the 4th year of Tiberius's reign. He lived a virtuous life. He was a wonder worker. He had a brother named James. Like he's okay. He had a cat named Star. He had a red bike. He was acclaimed to be the Messiah. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. I mean, these are testimony of a historical Jesus, SJ. With the exception of the wonder worker, which we can argue those sources. Outside sources tell us that an eclipse and earthquake occurred when he died. No, they do not. They tell us that, but they do not corroborate with seismological knowledge or with cosmological knowledge. We I mean, there are earthquakes were recorded by historians at the time, and one so great as to split the temple veil and to cause the dead to rise from their grave would surely be documented. Why didn't you mention the people rising, the saints rising out of their graves and walking into town to meet people and to hang out with them as extra biblical testimony of Jesus? Um, I don't know. That's interesting. He was crucified on the eve of the Jewish Passover. Historical Jesus. His disciples believed he rose from the dead. Okay? A lot of people believe a lot of things. That does not mean that belief is true. No matter how convicted you are of it, even to the point of death, whether or not by martyrdom, I think I'm going to make a meme that's going to be a list of the ones that truly are martyrs, and I'm going to be honest, because what I would want you to do in my position would be to take the text that prove the most that this person was a martyr, that actually says they're martyrdom, even if all the other ones don't. And I'm going to see which ones say they're a martyr and which ones don't. Not agape. Agape, iron charioteer, is like an unconditional love. It's the type of love that God is supposed to have for His children, the same ones that He drowned. Oh fudge! Why did I do that? Okay, let's see. His disciples believed He rose from the dead. His disciples were willing to die for their belief. A lot of people are willing to die for their beliefs. Christianity spread rapidly as far as Rome, but they didn't have sex. Remember that. His disciples denied the Roman gods and worshipped Jesus as God. Yes, that's absolutely true. That means nothing. People smoke weed when it's illegal. Why? Because it makes them feel good. Their religion, it gave them hope. It made them feel good. When you do you know that new church feeling? Anybody who's an ex-evangelical or an evangelical, a current believer, do you know that new church feeling, that elation that you get? Just, yeah, this, I belong. Like, this is, I've been looking for this. Like, these are my people. This is what I've been looking for. This is what my soul needs. Right. This is where God is calling me. And just feeling that, just that sense of elation, and you're just like, yeah, this is my church, and you don't go to any other church. Does that mean that your church is the true church? Okay, everybody, I am Jim Majors. This is S.J. Thomason, I'm sorry. And thank you, SJ, for being so gracious in the live chat and for joining us here. I hope that you watch this video and get around my stammering. I hope that you do a better job at editing this video than I did. And maybe you can answer some of these questions, because I truly want to have this conversation with you, and I want to see you approach this from an intellectually honest and place, in a place of integrity. Not that you currently don't, but I want you to be well informed, because to just ignore anything else because you think that you have a truth so you can maintain an integrity is just as disingenuous as knowing about something and rejecting it. But if you know that there's a text out there that says something different and is an earlier text, I feel comfortable saying that you have a spiritual and a real world obligation to seek out that truth. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me in the live chat. We got Iron Charioteer, we've got S.J. Thomason, Sweet Heathen. Thank you, ladies, so much for staying in the chat. Silver Lena, Mr. Shadow Kitty, thank you guys so much. Easeism works, I love that. Wonder Lady, thank you so much, Wonder Lady, for coming. Maya Atkinson. We've got, let's see, is that everybody who stayed? No Name, of course, got to shout out No Name. And I'm just going to shout out SJ one more time for the hell of it. Why not? Um, Thank you. I really appreciate this. And let me set up the. You know what? You guys just stay here. I'll be right back, and I'll set this up. I just got to figure out how to do this. What?